There is a brand new exotic mission in Destiny 2. It's called Dual Destiny, and completing it is how you get your exotic class item. I'm going to take you through how to unlock it and how to complete the mechanic-based encounters within it. First off, this is a timed co-op mission, and you will need a buddy to complete it. It cannot be done solo or with 3 players, it must be strictly 2 because of the way the mission is designed. Secondly, you will need to complete this mission once per character to get all of the exotic class items. But after you earn it once, Overthrow chests in the Pale Heart have a low chance to drop another randomly rolled version of it. And lastly, in order to even unlock the mission, you'll need to have completed Micah's 2 quests, Found in the Dark and Lost in the Light. I am unsure if you need to do anything beyond that, but I know at the very least, completing those is a requirement. If you plan to do the majority of content in the Final Shape DLC, please do yourself a favor, unlock all of the assists through Micah's Alone in the Dark quest, complete her 3 Legendary Convalescence quests, and do the Destined Heroes quest for the exotic sword. I'm not sure quite how much stuff in this DLC is tied to completing those, but it seems like quite a bit. So there are some secret steps that we need to complete in order to even access the mission, and all of these steps can be done straight through the Pale Heart Patrol. Despite this being a 2-player mission, you can unlock the mission for all 3 players in your fire team through these patrol steps. Once everyone in your fire team unlocks the mission, it will be permanently accessible to them and can even be launched through the Pale Heart map. To begin unlocking the mission, start in the landing region and do the overthrow activity until you spawn in the final boss. Around 15 seconds after you've defeated this final boss, you'll see a pop-up that says a secret keeper of the Witch Queen is near. Usually this will be accompanied by some Savathûn dialogue, but not always. If you see this text pop up, it means you need to search the region you're in to find a Lucent Hive Wizard. Here's the location that we found it in during our run.
The light provides.
When you kill the Hive Guardian, remember to crush its ghost to completely kill it, and then you can head on to the Blooming. You're going to repeat all of those steps, killing the final boss of Overthrow and finding another Hive Guardian. Once we defeated the final boss in the Blooming, here's where the Hive Guardian spawned for us. And as you can probably guess, we need to repeat everything one last time, this time in the Impasse region. Here's where we found the final Hive Guardian. After you've killed the Lucent Hive Guardian in all 3 areas, head to the Refraction. Once you reach the open area with the Shrieker, you should see a giant beam of light, which you should then go to.
Guardian down.
Walking inside this area will trigger dialogue of Savathun laughing, and then she'll mark 2 locations in world for you. At each of these marked locations, which are pretty close to each other, there will be a ton of enemies that you have to clear out, and there does appear to be a time limit on it based on the Savathun's envoy buff. Clearing out enough of the enemies at one of the spots will spawn a subjugator. Damage him for a third of his health bar, and then this will spawn an orb next to him. One subjugator will drop a dark orb, and the other will drop a light orb. These need to be taken back to where the beam of light was, and dunked into their corresponding beams, one dark, one light. And that is the final step to unlocking the mission Dual Destiny. Quick note for those who care about the Pale Heart Destination title, the remaining 6 feathers for the Feather of Light Triumph can be found in this mission. I'll have a guide on their locations linked in the description very soon. In order to start the mission, you'll either need one player to be on a light subclass and one on a dark subclass, or you both need to be on Prismatic. And during the exotic mission, you cannot change your subclass, so choose wisely. There will be 2 bosses you'll have to kill at the end of this mission, but most of it is focused on ad clearing. So if you or your friend or teammate is a hunter, I highly recommend at least one of you runs Tether because that will come in handy. The first mechanic you'll be presented with is the dark and light plates. Because my friend and I were both on Prismatic, it randomly assigned me to be the light player and them to be the dark player, and you can tell which role you have by the buff on your screen. So the plate mechanic is simply this: the light player needs to stand on the light plate, dark on dark, and if you stand on them at the same time, it progresses the mission, usually by way of removing a blocked area, moving platforms into place, or just allowing you to move further into an encounter. I don't feel like it's necessary to cover these plates every time they appear in the mission because it's just the same thing over and over, but just know that they appear quite frequently. The second mechanic you'll find in this mission involves some symbols. In the first encounter area, the dark person will sit up top and the light person below. Periodically, both players will be met by a shielded enemy that only they can kill. Dark players will have to kill a Taken Knight, and light players will have to kill a Taken Centurion. When killed, these will drop a mote, and picking up said mote will spawn in a symbol. In this first encounter, light player will be the one calling out the symbols, while dark player will have symbols spread around them floating in the air that they have to shoot. There will be multiple symbols, but dark player should only shoot the one that light player calls out, and you will need to do this 2 times. Shooting an incorrect symbol will force you to restart the sequence from scratch with a new set of symbols. When dark player has shot both symbols that light player calls out in the order of how they spawned, you will move on to the next section of this encounter, which has you do the exact same thing, except the roles are reversed. This time, the dark player will be the one calling out the symbols while the light player shoots them. Since there are 3 motes to collect in this encounter, that means 3 symbols to call out and shoot, and the way we chose to do this was just wait until we had all 3 symbols before shooting them in order. If you can successfully complete these 3 symbols in this section, you've got 1 more to do where the roles are reversed again, and this time you'll have 4 symbols to keep track of. Light player will be reading the symbols here while dark player shoots. Again, the way we preferred to do it was just wait for all the symbols to show up, which means killing 4 Centurions and Taken Knights, and then shooting all the symbols in order. Between this first encounter space and the next, there are several of those light and dark plates you and your partner need to sync up with to progress, but other than that, it's just a few enemies and a lot of jumping. In the second encounter, you're presented with a new mechanic. In front of you in this room will be an array of 9 what I'm calling darkness cruxes, with tethers connecting them to the center. Throughout this encounter, some of these tethers will disappear. The tethers that disappear and those that remain will be slightly different for both people. So your goal is to find out which 3 are the same between you and your teammate, and then having one person shoot those 3 shared cruxes. In order to actually shoot them, you need a buff called Harmonic Sundering. This comes from getting the final blow on the Tormentor that spawns after clearing enough enemies, and the Harmonic Sundering buff lasts for 30 seconds. The way we found it easiest to solve this puzzle was by reading the array of cruxes from 1 through 9 clockwise. To start, me as the light player would call out the 3 cruxes that did not have tethers, and my teammate, who was the dark player, would then look at theirs and also see 3 cruxes that didn't have tethers. Whoever gets the final blow on the Tormentor becomes the shooter, and as the shooter, your job is to avoid shooting any cruxes that aren't tethered both on your screen and on your teammate's screen based on the numbers that they called out. Here's an example of this. Let's say that I, the light player, call out 7, 8, and 9, which are the ones not tethered on my screen. From my teammate's perspective, who is Dark Player, the ones that are not tethered for them are 1, 3, and 5. This would leave cruxes 2, 4, and 6 as the only ones that we both share as being tethered, because every other one that we called out is missing a tether. Since my teammate was the one to kill the Tormentor and now has the Harmonic Sundering buff, they can shoot 2, 4, and 6. Shooting the correct 3 cruxes will cause this message to pop up saying Light and Darkness Surge, destabilizing an obelisk. Now normally destabilizing something sounds bad, but this is actually an indicator that you've done it correctly, because you're trying to get rid of the obelisk to progress in the mission. All you have to do is do this 2 more times for a total of 3 rounds, and you'll beat the encounter. Now while editing this, I did realize you could just as easily do your callouts the opposite way. Instead of calling out what's not tethered, you could just read out the ones that are tethered. It would mean you have to call out 6 numbers instead of 3, but it might make it easier for the shooter to understand since they only have to listen for which numbers match with their set. Encounter 3 combines both the symbols callout from Encounter 1 and the cruxes from Encounter 2, but thankfully not at the same time. You'll start this encounter by damaging the boss Inspector Sellen until he goes immune. Then 2 wizards will spawn shortly after this happens, one for Light Player and one for Dark Player. Here, Light Player will be doing the symbol callouts again, while Dark Player will be shooting the symbols. 3 of these symbols will appear in a vertical column behind the boss when the Light Wizard is killed. And just like before, you should read them out to your teammate, this time from top to bottom. Have your teammate shoot the symbols around the area in that order, and this will remove the boss's shield. Once you get Inspector Sellen to 1/3 health, a second boss will come out named Inspector Yemek. So start damaging him until you chew through 1/3 of his health bar and he goes immune. This will spawn in another 2 wizards, making you call out and shoot another 3 symbols, this time with the roles reversed so that Light Player is the one shooting. Complete that successfully and you can damage Inspector Yemek for another 1/3 of his health. With both bosses at 1/3 of their health, they'll both go inside of this yellow cage and go immune, and you'll have to solve a final puzzle. On either side of the room now is an array of cruxes, like in the second encounter, but this time 1 for each person. Since I was Light Player, I was on the right side of the room, and you'll know you're on the wrong side if you look at the cruxes and all of them have tethers. This means you're looking at your teammate's side because their pattern is hidden from you. So when you're both on the correct sides, you'll have to do basically what you did in Encounter 2 with some slight changes. This time, instead of calling out which ones are not tethered, we're going to call out which ones are tethered, and we have to do this much faster because the pattern changes every handful of seconds. During the second encounter, we called out the cruxes that didn't have tethers because there was only a max of 3 of them that didn't every time. So for the third encounter, let's call out the cruxes that do have tethers because there's only 4 of them and it's a lot easier to keep track. Out of these 4 cruxes that have tethers, you and your teammate need to find the one crux that you both share. Now thankfully this array has 12 cruxes, which means that if you know how to quickly read a clock, this shouldn't be too difficult. Let's use this round as an example. So this was what my side looked like, and I would call out 12, 3, 4, and 9, since I'm reading it like a clock, and those are the ones that have tethers for me. Now my teammate listens to my callouts, and then on their side, they see something like this, with their tether callouts being 5, 7, 8, and 12. Since we both share crux number 12, that's the one we both need to shoot. So my teammate relays that information back to me, and then we both shoot number 12 quickly before the pattern changes again. You have to do this a total of 3 times, and every time you're successful, you'll see the message barrier strength has diminished until it is fully down. For those wondering, you do not have to do 3 patterns in a row, you just have to do 3 patterns successfully without messing up. If you're fumbling around on a pattern and it ends up changing before you're able to call it out, that is totally fine. You can let it rotate around as many times as you want. There is no penalty for how many cycles it does. At some point in this third encounter, most likely when you're getting close to running out of time, a Lucent Hive wizard will spawn near the back of the room, and if you kill it, you'll gain an extra 3 minutes. This can completely save your run, especially if you've just run out of ammo and are having to use primary. So when the barrier is fully down, you can begin damaging both bosses at once until you kill them. Thank gosh there is no revive tokens in here, and even if you both wipe at the same time, there's no penalty other than wasted time. After killing both the bosses, you have an option to 1v1 your teammate, which is pretty silly, but no matter who wins or loses, you both still get the exotic class item. Even if activities that require a lot of communication aren't your cup of tea, I highly recommend at least giving this a try, because it has a lot more effort put into it than I was expecting. It feels like a dungeon, honestly, and it's really cool. If you enjoyed this guide, then please drop me a like and share the video to someone who could use it, and with that, I will catch you guys in the next one.